What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Taylor Wilson, and today this is a Resourceful Vet podcast. I'm here with Ben Killoy, and Ben is a U.S. Marine veteran turned blogger, life coach, speaker, and now a podcaster who seeks to bring military veteran dads home to their families. He resides in Janesville, Wisconsin, with his wife and 3 beautiful kids. Ben went through what most transitioning veterans go through of redefining identity and rediscovering passion and purpose for life. A seminar changed it all for him and realigned him to his passion for leadership. Since he has been on a mission to master leadership principles and use his passion for leadership to help dads understand who they are, develop the skills to overcome adversity, and own their life and choices truly to come home to their life.
I'm glad to be here, Taylor.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. So Ben, I know you have the Military Veteran Dad podcast, and I definitely want to talk about that and let our audience know more about that. And so first question, what does it mean to be a military veteran dad?
So military veteran dad is kind of a term that, it was born out of the lack of a term that connects military dads and veterans dads. And I was like, there's no good term that connects both of those two people together, people that serve and people that have served. And I was on my way to work one time, and I think it was a radio. They had said something like MVP. And I was like, it popped in my head. MVD, military veteran dad. And so the basic core of it is just someone who served in the military, either active or is a veteran, and you are a father. Whether you're married, it doesn't really matter. But if someone calls you dad, you fall under that title. And for me, my story of coming home as a dad started when I turned 30. That I kind of begun my first midlife crisis of really figuring out who I was. And it was really, I'm now 36, so that was 6 years ago. And it's been that 6-year journey of me coming home that has really brought me around full circle to now help other dads come home to their families, because so many dads come home physically, but we do not come home mentally from war.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's important. And what would you say is, like, as far as, those dads that, come home from war and, just in the military, out of the military, what are some common goals or things that you see across the board with, what these dads are talking about or sharing, or, what's next for them?
There was a phrase that was recently told to me. I can't remember where it came from, but it made perfect sense when I heard it. So I never deployed to Afghanistan or Iraq. I did all my time in the Marine Corps in Okinawa. But the moment they said this advice or this mindset that happens to many dads is they feel like they're deployed to Texas, and I live in Afghanistan. So like literally in their mind, they feel like they're still a part of Afghanistan, that's where they call home. And they're deployed to Texas. Like in their mind, where they're coming home to every day, whether it be active duty or as a veteran, they feel like that is more of a war zone than it was in Afghanistan. And when they said that, it instantly made sense to me, because what we have in the military is that tribe of people around us that are going to make sure we come home. They are going to have our six, especially in the Marine Corps, we know this part of our identity. It's all tied together. And the other branches of the service have the same thing. And when you have that feeling, you feel like you can do so much more. You feel like you're supported. You feel loved in a way that oftentimes many people don't get in their family. And you don't know you have that when you transition out, and you don't know how to recreate it. That's another part that people get stuck on, is we don't know what we have when we serve. So we don't know that we need to have it again when we leave. And we go to this lone wolf mindset that we can do it alone, because that just feels like the default. And that's what everybody else in society is doing. Other men in the civilian world, they're doing the lone wolf mindset, and they may look like they're thriving on the outside, but on the inside, they're not. And we just kind of adopt that. But to me, that's rarely where the problem starts beginning, is that you're going to do this idea of doing it alone. And we were never wired to do life alone. There's a good analogy that I got from the Marine Corps was the first thing the Marine Corps breaks is your back. And that's because you don't need heavy equipment to lift things. You just need more Marines. So if you've got something heavy, they're not going to bring a fork truck over here. No, they're going to say throw some more Marines on this problem and try to lift it. The same analogy applies to life, because life is going to give you more than you can handle. And you're going to need other people around you to share the load. And to kind of bring this full circle, after interviewing almost 100 dads on the podcast, it's really evident to me of how apparent that for millennia, we survived in tribes as men. We had people ahead of us and we had people behind us. We were never required to know everything and to do everything. But in the last 150 years, that's exactly how we've designed our life. And it's almost set up for failure from the very beginning, because the lone wolf always dies.
Absolutely. Well, one thing you said there too with talking about tribes, I think that, especially in the Marines, just because, I was in the Marines too, and I definitely know what you're talking about with that, just having that tribe and, somebody there for you. And, once you get out of the uniform, it's kind of it's a different transition, and where you are a lone wolf and, you're on your own now and you don't have, anybody to report to, or, you have a different set of responsibilities, and, finding that tribe and being able to continue on and, grow, I think is huge. So, but as far as the Military Veteran Dad podcast, how can people follow that and get in touch with you on there?
The beauty part of Military Veteran Dad is the SEO and the title give you everything you need to know. Because when you Google it on a podcast player, it's Military Veteran Dad. When you want to go to the website, it's militaryveterandad.com. So all of the links for all the different podcast players are on militaryveterandad.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter on militaryveterandad.com. But again, on all the podcast players, you can even tell Alexa, play Military Veteran Dad podcast, and she'll play it just with those 3 keywords. So if you can remember those 3 keywords, you've got access to all the information.
That's huge. So if we look you up, are you on Spotify?
Pretty much everything. There is not a podcast player that I'm aware of that I'm not on.
Good to know. Cool. Well, so as far as the podcast and with what you're up to now, how has this helped make a difference for others?
The biggest difference that I notice is and it comes in breadcrumbs, because most military veteran dads are very quiet. And that part, they love the podcast because they do reach out occasionally. And they do leave breadcrumbs on the iTunes reviews. And those breadcrumbs indicate that in many cases, they come home to their families because they had a podcast helping them go through that transition. There's wives that have left iTunes reviews saying that I had my husband because I introduced him to your podcast and he decided to start getting help. I did a podcast episode last fall around November time. And it was a solo episode. And it was only like my 3rd or 4th one. I don't consider it a very big topic. I'm trying to remember what it was. It might have been on friendships. And he wrote me a 4-paragraph email. And so he's a Vietnam veteran, and he listened to this episode and he wrote 4 paragraphs and essentially said, if I had your podcast 30 years ago, I would have been a better dad. And I was just like, wow, what a testament to something that seemed very simple to me, like completely changed how he saw his life and maybe even what he could do differently in the remaining years of his kids' life. Because his kids were still around. He hadn't completely messed it up and they weren't part of his life. But he just realized of all the time that we left on the table as dads. And time is your most precious resource. And the trick with being a dad in general, whether you're a military dad or not, kids spell love Time. And so the more time you invest, the more time and a love they will feel from you. And the hardest part of being a military dad is the military takes a lot of your time, and you kind of create this credit card debt of time within your family. And it's very important that you become intentional with replacing that time when you come back home and creating memories that repay that debt with interest. Otherwise, your credit card, like your life, will go bankrupt, and we all know how those end.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It seems like, in some instances I've talked to people and, they're on their 2nd, 3rd, job and trying to make ends meet, or, still figuring out post-transition how to adapt and overcome. And, it can be tricky. So what other resources and benefits are available to veterans and spouses or anybody in the ecosystem with the Military Veteran Dad podcast?
So in the podcast, there are several different topics that I've tagged on my website. So I've pretty much touched all the different topics. I've talked to spouses of husbands that have taken their own life. I've talked to a Marine that actually did try to take his own life and he survived the attempt and his wife had to pull him down from the tree in the backyard. I've talked to financial experts. This fall, I did some shows on money. I've brought in some experts on marriage. I've talked to some Navy SEALs. There really isn't a topic that I haven't went right into. And one of the biggest resources that the podcast provides is that you're not alone. That through all of the podcast episodes, the one common theme you'll probably notice is these guys are very average. They aren't necessarily the people that are doing all the big things that you maybe see on Instagram or just see anywhere. These are just guys that I find on the internet and different groups and different collections that come to my way or referrals. And they're just regular people doing good things, and hearing their story, the resource of providing that you're not alone with the thoughts that you're feeling in your head. Because so many times we get caught up in this BS story that our head tells us that you're the only one feeling this way. and it becomes an echo that gets so loud that it tunes out all the voices. And my big goal with every episode is to cancel out that echo by sharing something vulnerable, to share something in a way that proves to their mind that they're not the only ones feeling this way. And it's that moment that you say to yourself, that guy has the same problem as I do. And I was telling myself that I only had this problem. I wonder what else I could be wrong about. To me, that moment is the moment where everything begins to change. And in that moment, so much can become possible because you start questioning the stories, the truths, the lies that you've told yourself to get to where you are today and to wake up every day. Sometimes you lie to yourself in a lot of different ways that you're not realizing to make your world seem right. And that's an important way to say it because everybody has their own version of right. And until you start questioning your own right, you're not going to be able to really understand a better way. And so 2 big resources that I do offer on my podcast is a free friendship course. So friendships really helped change my life. They brought different people into my life, and they started reflecting back value that I couldn't see myself, that allowed me to see that I have a voice, I have a story, I have a nuance about me that allows dads to start feeling for the first time in ways that they've never really imagined. And that all began because I started having more friends. And so at freedadcourse.com, I have a 5 audio lesson, simple course, nothing's free of charge. And those 5 lessons are how to create more friends in your life. And those lessons are what I use to really just create an abundance of friends, because when you have friends, you feel like you can do everything. When you don't have friends, you feel like you can't do anything. And no one really talks about how good a quality friend is. And even our common friend, Chris Hoffman, he was one of the very first friends within this online journey that I met. And his friendship is still enduring. That is how this podcast episode became about, because we were both in San Diego in September at a wedding because of a friend. And so if you're looking for more friends in your life, if you're admitting that you're alone, go check out freedadcourse.com. And if you are already maybe on this path to coming home and you need a little bit of help, I have also an 8-week coaching program over at benkilloy.com. And that program is designed essentially for my life and all the wisdom of the podcast to take each week in a module in a way to help you figure out where you are, but then also really get you to come home physically and mentally and step into that life that you know is waiting for you in your heart when you do look there.
Wow. Well, that's a lot of great information right there. And no, that's huge. I mean, having that tribe and, staying connected, it's important. And so what would you say, Ben, as far as just, post-transition out of the uniform and, achieving success, what's important to know, transitioning out of the military?
The single most important thing for me, and I don't know, I probably didn't learn this till 15 years later. And so I got out in 2007. So it's 2020 when we're recording this. And I don't think I learned this lesson, or this Killoyism, as my friend calls them, till like 2018, is that the amount of opportunity you feel on the other side of transition, it's directly proportional to the amount of strangers that you talk to daily. I know so many veterans that only know the one default programming that TAPS gives you on the way out. And that's what we accept. That's what I accepted. I went to school. I got a job. I was only unemployed for 2 weeks. I feel like I got super lucky compared to other people and how they've transitioned. But that programming just ran for almost 10 years without really any guidance, without really any updates, and without really any dreaming. And all it led me to was a place of loneliness, misery, and despair, because I wasn't happy on the inside. I had everything on the outside, but on the inside, I was just an empty shell. And so for me, if I would have started talking to people well before I got out and started asking, like, what do you do for a living? What was your transition like? What do you think I should know that you knew now and you wish you would have known at my stage? I would have been so much farther, because what I've learned now, and this came from a Navy SEAL, Andy Stump, when I had him on the podcast, is oftentimes what we don't have is a wide enough view of the American dream. And you can't get a wider view until you start bringing in new thoughts. And the 2 best ways, maybe 3 best ways to bring in new thoughts is to read books on how people live their life, maybe autobiographies as well, to understand how they thought. The second one is podcasts, because they're conversations, and every conversation, I remember probably like 6 years, all I would do on the way to work was listen to podcasts, and that was my automobile university. And then the third one is talking to people, having a coffee. Before COVID, it was a lot easier. Now with COVID, it's more of a Zoom conversation. But so much of my life has been exponentially moved forward because I continue to talk to that one person. And now my mindset, I wish I had this mindset when I first got out, because I would have 10x my progress and not had to go through what I went through, is you are always one conversation away from changing your life. and you're going to miss 100% of those shots you don't take. And I wish someone would have told me that in day one, because I would have started, because my life was so much easier. I didn't have any kids. I had nothing. I was a one-man show. And I look at my life now with 3 kids under 8 and everything that I'm doing. I'm like, God, I just blew so much time drinking or hanging out at the bar or playing Xbox in Okinawa doing freaking nothing. Like all of that time, I could have been having a beer with someone else on the island to talk about what they wanted to do on the other side of transition. Instead, we were just talking about nonsense. And that advice would have changed my life on the other side of the transition.
Absolutely. Well, what are some books that you'd recommend for anybody out there watching this that, take note of or they should read that you recommend?
Well, the golden classic is How to Win Friends and Influence People by, can you help me out? What's the name of the guy? Daniel Carnegie? No.
Yeah, Carnegie. That's right.
Carnegie. Okay. I don't feel like it's Carnegie because I feel like he interviewed Daniel Carnegie.
Maybe.
How to Win Friends and Influence People. I feel like an idiot not knowing the name of that. But that's the title of the book. There's only one book out there. Go check out that book because that is the core. It was written like 1950s. And that book has so much truth of what people need in a conversation. And the part that no one talks about, and this is like the core piece that I was missing, in those conversations, 2 things happen. 1, you become a person of value because your story, your ideas, your truth, whatever, comes through to help that other person. But the second part that happens is they show you who you really are. They reflect back things that you can't see. They tell you things that you're like, wow, that was really well put, how you said that. I wouldn't be a podcaster today if people didn't start telling me, you have a way with words, Ben. You need to do something with it. If I was just spitting words into the abyss of getting no feedback, I would never have known that what I was doing was something special. And so that, to me, is something super important. And I would start with How to Win Friends and Influence People. If you are in the money category, there was a real book that really kind of blew everything up for me, which was Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover in 2014. I had bottomed really hard when it came to debt. And 2 weeks later, I found that book and it changed my life. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was preparing myself for 2020 because in January 27th of this year, I lost my job. And this year has actually been pretty easy financially because I don't have any debt. Had I not found that book, had I not eliminated all of our debt except for our mortgage, this year would have been a lot harder and I would have been a lot more stressed. And I probably would have had to get a job very quickly because there was all this debt that I owed other people.
That's huge. Well, thank you for sharing that, Ben. And with that, that concludes our podcast today, everyone. And Ben, how can people follow you or get a hold of you if they want? Again, the website name is militaryveterandad.com. Best place to get a hold of me is on Instagram. My personal handle is @Ben_Killoy, or the podcast handle is @militaryveterandad. Those are the 2 best places to get a hold of me. My golden rule in life is to always be the friend I wish I had in my life 5 years ago. So if you're struggling, if you need a hint, if you need a conversation, if you need someone just to know that they care about, that you exist, reach out to me. I'm more than always willing to have a conversation because a conversation changed my life. So I'm always willing to gift those conversations to others as well. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ben. And to anyone out there, definitely check out Ben's website and, see what's there for you. Thank you.